Hello everyone, thank you for being here. Hope you have a relaxing and comfortable time with Stories for Happy Life channel. The afternoon sun shone brightly over Riverwalk Park in Savannah, Georgia, casting dappled shadows beneath sprawling live oaks draped in Spanish moss. Children laughed, chasing each other around the playground, and joggers passed by at a steady pace. Seated comfortably on a wooden bench overlooking the tranquil pond was Dr. Olivia Mitchell, a prominent civil rights attorney. Known for her unwavering dedication to justice, Olivia relished these brief moments of solitude. Her book lay open, its pages gently swaying in the mild breeze. Olivia had become engrossed in the narrative when the abrupt sound of tires squealing against pavement snapped her attention upward. A patrol car had pulled hastily to the curb, doors swinging open in synchronized authority. Two officers emerged, their faces stern, eyes scanning the area before quickly locking onto Olivia, the only person alone in this tranquil setting. "Ma'am, a moment please," one of the officers called, his tone edged with suspicion rather than courtesy. Olivia placed a bookmark carefully between the pages and closed the book, keeping her demeanor composed and unruffled. "Certainly," she responded evenly, meeting their eyes directly. The officers approached briskly. Officer Thompson, the taller of the two, with a rigid stance, led the questioning. "We received a complaint of suspicious behavior. Could you explain your reason for being here?" Olivia's brow furrowed slightly, her confusion genuine. "Suspicious behavior? I'm simply reading in the park." "Can we see some identification?" Officer Brooks interjected, his voice sharp, leaving little room for negotiation. "May I ask why that's necessary?" Olivia queried politely, sensing eyes from other park visitors turning curiously toward the unfolding scene. "Routine procedure," Thompson replied flatly, though his dismissive gaze suggested otherwise. With a measured breath, Olivia reached calmly into her bag and produced her wallet, handing over her driver's license. Thompson studied it exaggeratedly, reading aloud, almost mockingly. "Dr. Olivia Mitchell? And what exactly are you doing in this area today, doctor?" "I live nearby," Olivia answered steadily. "I come here often. Am I violating some law by sitting here peacefully?" Ignoring her question, Brooks added pointedly, "Do you typically spend afternoons alone? Just reading seems unusual." A ripple of discomfort moved through the small group of park visitors now watching the interaction. Olivia remained poised, though her pulse quickened in frustration. "I'm not obligated to justify reading alone in a public park," she asserted. Brooks stepped closer, his hand deliberately resting on his utility belt. "No need to get hostile, ma'am. We're just doing our jobs." "I'm not hostile," Olivia clarified, her tone firm but controlled. "I'm simply asserting my rights." "You're starting to obstruct our investigation," Thompson warned, his voice louder now, clearly intended for the gathering spectators. "Investigation?" Olivia echoed incredulously, aware of her own rising tension. "On what grounds?" Thompson abruptly reached for Olivia's arm. "You're resisting," he announced sharply. "Excuse me?" Olivia exclaimed, instinctively pulling her arm back slightly. "Stop resisting," Brooks commanded loudly, swiftly producing handcuffs. Gasps murmured through the onlookers. A young man nearby discreetly began recording the incident on his phone. "I'm not resisting," Olivia reiterated, attempting to maintain her composure even as humiliation and disbelief burned through her. Despite her protests, the officers roughly secured the cuffs around her wrists. The cold metal bit painfully into her skin, but Olivia remained outwardly calm. Her eyes met those of the young man filming, silently pleading with him to continue documenting this violation of her rights. As the officers led her toward their cruiser, questions erupted from the gathered crowd, their voices filled with confusion and concern. Olivia turned briefly, meeting the gazes of several strangers whose expressions mirrored her own shock and indignation. When the cruiser door slammed shut behind her, Olivia closed her eyes momentarily. The sound reverberated through her, solidifying the stark reality of injustice she'd spent her life fighting against. Yet, in the suffocating silence of the backseat, a new resolve ignited within her. This humiliation, this blatant misuse of power, would not go unanswered. This, Olivia knew with unwavering clarity, was merely the beginning of a much larger battle. The trip to the precinct was silent and tense. Olivia sat rigidly in the back seat of the cruiser, her wrists cuffed uncomfortably behind her. Each bump on the road felt magnified, reminding her vividly of the humiliation she'd just endured. Outside the window, the familiar streets of Lincoln blurred past, now foreign and uninviting. She had driven these streets countless times, confident and secure. Today she felt isolated and vulnerable, trapped in circumstances beyond her control. Once at the station, the routine booking procedures felt anything but routine. She was fingerprinted, photographed, and subjected to invasive questioning. The bright fluorescent lights overhead buzzed incessantly, intensifying her headache and amplifying the surreal nature of her predicament. Officer Mitchell, who had been one of her arresting officers, handled her paperwork with evident disdain, occasionally casting her sidelong glances filled with suspicion. "All right, Miss Hartley," Mitchell said dismissively, sliding paperwork across the counter. "You're charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. You'll have your day in court to argue otherwise." Olivia clenched her jaw but maintained her composure, responding evenly, "I understand my rights, and I'll be contacting my attorney immediately." Mitchell raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Do what you need to do." After what felt like hours, Olivia was finally escorted to a small holding cell. The heavy metal door closed behind her with a deafening clang, echoing her growing sense of isolation. She sat on the cold metal bench, the stark reality sinking in. Never had she imagined herself in this position. Her entire life and career had revolved around advocating for justice, defending the innocent, and upholding the law. Yet here she was, stripped of her dignity by the very system she had dedicated her life to serving. Sitting in silence, her mind raced, replaying the encounter in the park repeatedly. What had she done wrong? She was simply existing, enjoying a peaceful moment in public. The implications were clear, rooted deep in assumptions and biases. Anger surged through her veins, mingled with frustration and disbelief. How could two officers, entrusted to protect the public, treat someone with such blatant disrespect? Hours later, she was released on bail, her wrists marked red from the cuffs. She stepped out into the cool night air, inhaling deeply, desperate to clear her mind. Standing by the curb, her friend and trusted colleague, Natalie Brooks, was waiting. Her face etched with concern. "Olivia." Natalie rushed forward, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. "Are you all right?" Olivia returned the hug tightly, relief washing over her momentarily. "Physically, yes," she replied softly. "Emotionally, I'm shaken, but more than anything, I'm angry." Natalie stepped back, studying Olivia carefully. "What happened exactly? I saw some of the videos online already." Olivia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "They approached me without cause, demanded identification, treated me like a criminal from the start. When I asked questions, asserting my rights, it escalated quickly." Natalie's jaw tightened. "This is unacceptable. You know that, right? We can't let this slide." "Oh, trust me," Olivia said resolutely, determination flashing in her eyes. "I have no intention of letting it slide. This isn't just about me. This is systemic. This is about accountability." As they drove home, Olivia stared blankly out the window, mentally preparing herself for the battle ahead. Her life had always been defined by her passion for justice, but never had it felt this personal, this urgent. The lines between her professional responsibilities and personal convictions were now blurred, and she recognized the weight of responsibility that came with it. Back in the sanctuary of her home, Olivia sat at her kitchen table, paperwork sprawled before her. She methodically began outlining the legal challenge ahead, pulling relevant case files, noting precedents and documenting every detail of her humiliating arrest. Her phone buzzed continuously with messages of support from friends, family, and colleagues who had already seen the video online. While comforting, the flood of attention also heightened the pressure she felt. As the night deepened, Olivia worked tirelessly, her anger evolving into a steely resolve. This fight would not be simple, but she knew it was necessary. She would use this moment not just to seek justice for herself, but to push for a broader change, to demand accountability from those who had violated their oath. It was more than a legal battle. It was a fight for dignity, respect, and systemic change. In the weeks following the incident, Victoria immersed herself in meticulous preparation, transforming her frustration into focused determination. Her home office became a war room, filled with legal books, documented precedents, and piles of evidence. She methodically constructed her civil rights lawsuit against the officers in their department, determined that her experience wouldn't fade into obscurity like so many others. Her law firm colleagues initially expressed reservations, concerned that the controversial nature of the case might reflect negatively upon their prestigious reputation. Victoria, unwavering, addressed their hesitation head-on in a firm, measured voice during an emergency meeting. "This case isn't just about me," she asserted, standing confidently before her peers. "It's about exposing systemic failures that permit injustice. If we, as attorneys, shy away from difficult truths, we abandon the very essence of our profession." Her passion was persuasive, shifting the atmosphere in the room from skepticism to cautious support. Slowly but surely, her colleagues began to see the broader implications of her fight. The lawsuit gained momentum within the firm, attracting a dedicated team eager to tackle the injustice Victoria had endured. Simultaneously, the video of her unjust arrest, captured and uploaded by the bystander in the park, went viral across social media platforms. Public outrage surged, prompting local news stations to pick up the story. Emails, letters, and phone calls flooded in from people across the nation, sharing similar experiences and expressing solidarity with Victoria. Her personal struggle had inadvertently ignited a larger, more profound dialogue. Though the media relentlessly pursued interviews, Victoria chose privacy, declining each request politely yet firmly. She knew her focus needed to remain sharp and strategic, free from external distractions that could dilute her message. Instead, she channeled her energy into community engagement, speaking at town halls, participating in local workshops, and meeting with advocacy groups committed to criminal justice reform. At one community meeting held in a local library, Victoria stood before a diverse crowd of residents and activists. The room was hushed, eyes attentive, waiting for her words. "My experience isn't unique," she began, her voice strong yet tinged with emotion. "It's an example of a broken system that affects countless lives daily. We need accountability, transparency, and meaningful reform. The officers involved in my arrest did what they did because they've operated within a system that has allowed them to act without consequence. That ends now." Her speech resonated deeply, sparking passionate discussions and leading to commitments from local leaders to examine police practices closely. Attendees approached Victoria afterward, their eyes filled with gratitude and determination, sharing their stories and offering support. One afternoon, as Victoria walked from a meeting to her car, a woman approached her hesitantly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Miss Reynolds," she said softly, voice trembling, "I can't thank you enough for standing up. My son went through something similar, but we didn't know what to do or who would listen. You've given us hope." Victoria paused, deeply moved by the woman's words. She took her hand gently. "We're all in this fight together," she said reassuringly. "Every voice matters, especially those who've been silenced for too long." That evening, as Victoria reviewed her growing list of community supporters and advocacy groups pledging assistance, her lawyer called unexpectedly, bringing news that complicated everything. "Victoria," he started cautiously, "I just learned that the officers filed a motion to dismiss. We expected that, but there's more. You've been assigned to preside as judge over an upcoming misconduct case involving these very officers." Victoria felt her heart momentarily halt, her breath catching as she absorbed the irony of the situation. The very individuals responsible for her humiliation were now defendants awaiting her judgment. "Are you serious?" she asked, needing confirmation despite knowing her lawyer wouldn't joke about something this crucial. "Completely," he affirmed, a mixture of concern and incredulity in his tone. "The timing is astonishing, but it's also an extraordinary chance to showcase genuine, impartial justice." Victoria leaned back, closing her eyes as she weighed the gravity of the moment. Her personal struggle had now intersected with her professional duty in a way that demanded absolute integrity and fairness. Yet deep within, she recognized this as more than coincidence. It was an opportunity to demonstrate what true justice looked like. As the hearing reconvened the following day, the courtroom was filled beyond its usual capacity. The events of the previous day had drawn attention, and whispers about Judge Ava Mitchell presiding over a case involving the very officers who had unjustly arrested her now spread through the community. Ava knew the eyes of the public, and the expectations of justice were upon her. She stepped onto the bench with an air of quiet dignity, aware that this moment was not merely about personal vindication, but about setting a precedent for fairness and accountability. Officers Landry and Martinez returned to the courtroom, visibly more subdued. Their earlier confidence had waned, replaced by a discomfort that was difficult to conceal. Landry repeatedly adjusted his collar, while Martinez stared blankly ahead, avoiding Ava's gaze. "Let's continue," Ava stated firmly, signaling for the prosecution to resume presenting their evidence. The prosecutor stood and called to the stand Maria Lopez, a young woman who had witnessed the officer's encounter with Samuel Davis, the man who had accused Landry and Martinez of excessive force. Maria described the event clearly, her voice steady despite the nervous tremor in her hands. "They never gave him a chance," Maria explained, emotion thickening her voice. "Samuel raised his hands immediately, but the officers threw him to the ground anyway. He was compliant. There was no need for that kind of force." "Are you certain Samuel didn't resist or provoke the officers in any way?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Absolutely certain," Maria responded, looking directly at Ava. "He was scared, yes, but he never fought back." Ava listened attentively, her expression carefully neutral. She then permitted the defense attorney to cross-examine Maria. "Miss Lopez," the defense attorney began sharply, "did you actually see Officer Martinez throw Mr. Davis to the ground, or is it possible your view was obstructed?" "I saw it clearly," Maria answered without hesitation. "Nothing obstructed my view. They slammed him down for no reason." "You have no law enforcement training, correct?" the attorney pressed. "No, but so you can't be certain whether the officers perceived a threat, can you?" Maria hesitated, then answered firmly, "All I know is what I saw, and I saw excessive force." After Maria stepped down, the prosecution called Samuel Davis himself to testify. Samuel approached the stand slowly, favoring his left side, a remnant of the encounter still evident in his cautious movements. "Mr. Davis, please describe your interaction with Officers Landry and Martinez," the prosecutor instructed. "I was walking home when they stopped me," Samuel began quietly. "They said I matched the description of someone suspicious. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. Before I knew it, they threw me down hard. I kept saying I wasn't resisting, but they didn't stop." "Did they inform you of why you were being detained or questioned?" "Not clearly," Samuel responded. "They mentioned some vague report about a suspicious individual. I still don't know exactly why I was targeted. Ava carefully noted each detail, watching as Landry shifted uncomfortably and Martinez's jaw tightened. She allowed the defense attorney's cross-examination to proceed. Mr. Davis, have you previously had interactions with law enforcement? The defense attorney asked pointedly. Samuel looked down briefly before answering. Yes, minor things. Traffic tickets mostly, but nothing serious. Could your previous experiences have influenced your perception of this incident? No, Samuel said firmly, looking up. My past has nothing to do with how they treated me that day. As testimony continued, Ava felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon her. The parallels to her own experience were undeniable, yet she remained meticulously impartial, guiding the proceedings with unwavering fairness. By day's end, it was clear the prosecution had presented a strong case. As Ava adjourned the hearing, she reminded the courtroom of the solemnity and gravity of their proceedings. We will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments, she declared, tapping the gavel decisively. Officers Landry and Martinez left the courtroom without speaking, their expressions now reflecting genuine concern. Ava sat quietly, knowing the decisions she would soon make held profound implications, not just for this case, but for the very principles of justice she had vowed to uphold. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, buzzing with anticipation. Media representatives crowded the back rows, cameras discreetly positioned to catch every detail. Today was no ordinary session. This hearing symbolized a moment of reckoning, a chance to restore the public's fading trust in the justice system. Judge Maya Ellis entered the courtroom, her robe flowing gracefully behind her, each step measured and deliberate. The room fell silent as all eyes followed her ascent to the bench. Maya felt the weight of the moment, aware that her decision would echo far beyond these walls. Officers Brennan and Keegan sat rigidly at the defendant's table. Their usual confidence had melted away, replaced by anxious glances and restless shifting. They'd spent the last few days coming to terms with the implications of their actions, not only for their careers but for their identities as officers sworn to protect. The hearing resumed, with both sides given one final opportunity to summarize their positions. The prosecution delivered a pointed and compelling argument. Your Honor, the prosecutor stated, this isn't just a matter of excessive force. This is about officers entrusted with public safety who repeatedly chose to disregard the principles they vowed to uphold. Their actions betray not only their uniforms, but the entire community. Next, Brennan and Keegan's attorney stood, his voice weary, yet still attempting to find sympathy. These officers have dedicated their lives to law enforcement, he began cautiously. One mistake should not overshadow years of service. Maya listened intently, her gaze steady. As the defense attorney spoke, she couldn't help but reflect on her own experiences, how easily one mistake could shatter lives, how deep the wounds of injustice cut. After the statements concluded, silence enveloped the courtroom. Maya gathered her notes, took a breath, and addressed the room with a voice firm yet compassionate. When law enforcement officers act without regard for the dignity and rights of citizens, she began slowly, the harm extends far beyond the immediate victim. It fractures community trust. It undermines faith in the very institutions meant to safeguard our society. She paused, ensuring each word resonated. Officers Brennan and Keegan, the evidence has demonstrated clearly that your conduct was both unjustified and systemic. Accountability must not be merely punitive, it must foster genuine change. Brennan lowered his head. Keegan stared blankly at the table, visibly shaken. Maya continued, therefore, I am ruling that both officers be placed on immediate suspension without pay for 12 months, during which they will undergo extensive retraining focused on racial sensitivity, conflict de-escalation, and constitutional rights. Additionally, both officers will carry a formal disciplinary record that will remain permanently on file. Her gavel struck with finality, echoing through the silent room. This court is adjourned. As people filed out, the officers remained seated, seemingly immobilized by the reality of their new circumstances. Brennan, visibly distraught, finally stood and, in a rare moment of vulnerability, turned toward Maya. "Your Honor," Brennan said quietly, sincerity heavy in his voice, "I know an apology can't fix things, but for whatever it's worth, I'm truly sorry." Maya acknowledged him with a solemn nod, her voice clear but gentle. "Officer Brennan, your apology is a start, but actions are what rebuild trust. Use this as a chance to become the officer your community deserves." Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters clamored to speak with Maya. She gave a brief but powerful statement, emphasizing the importance of accountability and the need for systemic reforms within law enforcement. Justice, she asserted, means treating everyone with fairness, dignity, and respect, regardless of their appearance or background. Her words resonated widely, igniting fresh conversations about equity and accountability, both in local communities and on national platforms. Weeks later, changes began to manifest throughout Madison's police force. Mandatory retraining sessions commenced, and officers underwent rigorous evaluation. Community advisory boards were established to oversee policing practices, fostering transparency and dialogue between citizens and law enforcement. Late one evening, as Maya prepared to leave the courthouse, a young woman approached her hesitantly. "Judge Ellis," she said softly, "I saw what you did in court. Thank you for showing us what real justice looks like." Maya smiled warmly. "Justice isn't just my responsibility," she responded. "It belongs to all of us. When we demand accountability, we reclaim the power to create a fairer world." She walked to her car under a sky ablaze with sunset, feeling both the weight and possibility of her role. Her journey, fraught with unexpected obstacles and difficult choices, had led her to this moment, a moment filled with hope and purpose. Maya knew the road ahead was long, but she also knew that every courageous step brought them closer to true justice. And as she drove away, she promised herself that no matter how challenging the path became, she would continue to fight, leading by example. Because the pursuit of fairness was not merely a career, it was a calling. What is the lesson of this story? 1. Justice demands accountability. True fairness is only achieved when those who misuse authority are held responsible for their actions, no matter their position. 2. Impartiality builds trust. Real justice means remaining impartial and unbiased, even when personal feelings are involved. Upholding integrity, especially in difficult circumstances, strengthens the foundations of our society. 3. Speak up against prejudice. Bias and injustice persist when good people remain silent. It's everyone's responsibility to challenge prejudice, speak up against wrongdoing, and demand meaningful change. 4. Change is possible. Even when systems seem deeply flawed, dedicated individuals have the power to ignite reforms that transform communities and restore faith in justice. Together, we can create a society where fairness isn't just an ideal, it's a reality we actively protect. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss them, Beth. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.